Hello, and thanks for tuning in. This is In the Ring. I'm your host, Nick Delory. I'm here with Steve Acunto, an accomplished boxer and author. Steve, how you doing today? Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Okay. As you can see, we have some props here, and we have a wonderful poster that Steve did with world champ Roy Jones Jr., and another instructional poster that he did with Muhammad Ali, the great one, and a book right here, Champion's Boxing Guide. Steve, I'd like to talk about the book and your posters and how this all came about, and just to give the audience a little background on Mr. Acunto. Steve Acunto is a highly accomplished boxer. He had the longest tenure at the New York State Athletic Commission here in New York. He was also Director of Crime Prevention for 25 years here in Westchester County with the Sheriff's Department. And he is an all-around great guy, and I'm happy to say he's my coach and a very dear friend of mine. Steve, I'd like to thanks for coming on.
Well, Nick, about the poster, which you referred to, I went to Louisville and gave a talk there and met Muhammad Ali. Although I admire him and seen him in all the shows, all the fights, I admired him very much. I met him for the first time. I was able to persuade him to come to Westchester Community College to do a instructional video. Ditto for Roy Jones.
That must have been one of the highlights of your...
Well, I felt privileged and honored to have Ali come up. Probably the most photographed, best-known, most written about athlete of all time.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm sure you built a great rapport with Muhammad Ali down in Louisville when you were down there.
Yes, we were down there, and there was a specific reason for going out down there. They were trying to have a World Boxing Hall of Fame, and they wouldn't permit this person, Wolf Kahn, to have it at a specific area. And so it was relegated to a gym on the outskirts of town, and Ali came there with his father and his brother, Raham.
Okay. Wonderful.
That's where it all began.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And the Roy Jones?
Well, Roy was up. We honored Roy Jones at one of our boxer functions, and he liked the idea of the college boxing. Felt as I do that we should have it in the colleges to give it a different image, and that's why he came to do this video.
And he was also honored. I forgot to mention something. The AAIB, which is the American Association for the Improvement of Boxing, which you founded with the great Rocky Marciano.
1969. It's now 36 years old.
That's incredible that you've kept it alive all these years, and that you've you know, tried to improve the sport of boxing that you love so much, and honoring all these great champions and their hard work.
Well, you have to believe in it, Nick, to do it. And I believe in what we're trying to do, and the principal purposes of the AIB is medical safety, standardization of medical safety of boxers all over the country in all 50 states. New York is a good criteria for any commission to adhere to.
Yeah, definitely. So that's wonderful. And another thing, you do so much, Steve. It's amazing how much you get accomplished. Steve also runs a program at the Westchester Community College campus here in Westchester County. And tell us about that program. How long is the program?
Well, Nick, what's distinguished about the program is that we have the only credit course in the nation at this time. And I've been there 25 years, so they finally gave me a plaque last week. I guess they want to kick me out.
I highly doubt that. You were an integral part of getting a memorial for Rocky Marciano.
Yes, that exists in the city of White Plains on the grounds of the Antonio Meucci Lodge.
Yes. And
it was unveiled in 1990, in September. Rocky's birthday is in September.
Okay. That's, and that is, how did you get the funding for that?
Well, I raised some funding. The amount was $5,000. We had a little difficulty getting it on the grounds because one of the founders objected. He said, thought it would look too much like a tombstone.
Yeah.
The original design was, but subsequently I was inducted to the World Boxing Hall of Fame, California. And when they sent the letters out, they had a world. So I thought world champion, and they accepted that.
That's a great idea.
That version. You've seen it, of course.
Yes, very, very good idea. And now your book, Champion's Boxing Guide. This is a very useful tool and it's something that I think everybody should definitely try to get a copy of. It's a very informative manual on training tips, conditioning exercises, defensive techniques, strategy, boxers' daily regimen, preparatory workouts for boxers. How long did it take to create this book? And,
well, about a year and a half, 2 years, I'd say, in total. 2 years.
Yeah. And you also, there's just the list goes on and on, Steve. The videos that you've done with these former world champs, Willie Pep especially. I've watched that video, and Pep was just passed away. Unfortunately, we lost Willie.
November, Nick, you know.
Yes.
It was one of the sad moments of my life because we did an instructional video, probably the most informative one.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that Willie came down 4 times from Hartford to do the video, so we had to do different takes, you know. But he had a dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
A very dry sense of humor. But you know, he was married 3 times. So whenever they asked him about his wives, he said they were all great housekeepers. They kept the houses.
That's funny. Willie's definitely a gentleman and a champion, and I know you were very close. And these guys come down to your functions and support your work, and I think that it's a great thing. It really shows true character in these guys.
Well, he used to come down every year, Willie.
Yeah.
He didn't miss one function until he was too ill to attend.
Yeah.
And the last time he came down, he was wearing a cap. And, you know, sitting on a dais, it's formal, and caps are not worn on daises. So I said, "Are you Jewish?" He said, "No, I'm not." I said, "Why don't you kindly put that cap under there, and if you're Jewish, put a yarmulke on." He had a great sense of humor.
That's great.
Another time we were up to his 75th birthday in Stamford, and a lady extolled his greatness as a champion. She must have talked about a minute and a half or 2. And instead of saying, "Madam, thank you for your kind remarks," he said, "Madam, I can't disagree with you." I turned, I said, "You're too much."
It's funny. He was definitely a character.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention that you have a boxing clinic coming up. It happens to actually be today.
Yes, and in conjunction with that, Nick, I want to take this opportunity to commend you for the wonderful work you're doing with the Westchester Boxing Club. It's needed, it's successful, and I commend you again.
Thank you very much.
And the clinic we're doing tonight will demonstrate some of the basics of boxing with pictures, film of the icons which you have, you know. And I feel privileged to have had these people in my career because they're icons and not just some champion, or especially today when they have champions of Mulberry Street and South Bronx. There's so many belts, these plastic things, have become meaningless. You know?
These guys have, 10 or 12 fights and they're world champs.
Yeah. And think of Willie Pep, 230 professional fights.
Yes.
He won more than any other man in history. 65 amateur fights.
Yeah. And
then he had sustained a serious injury in a plane crash.
Really?
He went on to have 11 more bouts.
That's
He's
amazing.
a really remarkable fellow. And Boxing Digest ranked him #1 as the cleverest fighter of all time.
Willie Pep, that is.
Yeah. Ray Robinson was 2nd, Benny Leonard was 3rd, and from starting with Pernell Whitaker, who was 10th.
Yeah, you have another poster that we actually have in the gym, and it's the 25 greatest fighters of all time.
Yes, a consensus was made of the 25 greatest, and it's still pretty close to that, with the exception of new people that could be added, you know.
It's a great poster. It has their records on it, and it's a wonderful piece. I'm sorry we don't have it here today. Another person I'd like to mention, I know he's dear to you, he's very dear to me, and his name is Maurice Spizzato, otherwise known in the boxing world as Kid Sharkey.
I have very fond memories of Sharkey. I had quite a few amateur fights at one time, and Sharkey was assistant coach. He helped me a lot. And in addition to that, he's a Purple Heart recipient.
Yes, he is.
He once boxed a draw with Ray Robinson.
Yes.
And he's just a nice guy, one of the most pleasant people I've ever known. And I hope to see him later on.
Yes, we're definitely going to have him on the show, and I love all the talks that you and Sharkey and I have had going down the athletic commission.
Nostalgia.
Yes.
He's got a very good memory.
He does.
Rather prolific memory.
He's a wonderful man. He's like a father to me, and he's changed my life.
Like a good son would treat a father.
He's a very, very good person, and we have a lot of fun up at the club, training all these people that, just want to come in and they just want to get in shape and, not necessarily box.
He was very good. He was very good at work with me with all these amateur boxers.
Yeah.
We had a fellow that he sort of introduced, Al Backman.
Al Backman, yes. Al
His name
Backman
was Sam Robinson. He was a fellow wearing a little porcupine hat with a head too big for the hat. But the crux of the story is that we used to put boxing on at Glen Island for the Army. And we had an Army building there where we put these on. Now we'd have to go there from the mainland on a ferry. And it was one night, there was the most turbulent weather. Everybody was rocking and rolling, and someone became ill too from the turbulency. But what happened is this one fellow, Sam Robinson, was standing up and sleeping. I said, I thought only gods could walk.
That's funny.
He was, Nick. It was, Sharky will tell you about it. He got hysterical. He said, you see he's sleeping over there?
Now, yourself and Sharky, I know from stories that I've heard from you and from other people, you were very big on protecting your boxers.
Yes, that's the principal direction, focus of the AAIB.
Yes.
And in fact, we're calling for mandatory standardization of medical safety in all 50 states. We feel the McCain bill could do that. It's all-encompassing. Ironically, and they get irritated about it, Nick, because the bill was introduced again, the latest bill. He's the first one to have a bill passed in 1996, and subsequently the Alley bill. But after that, he introduced another bill which really would have done it. It was defeated along party lines. Ironically, McCain's a Republican. His own Republicans defeated, and the Democrats passed it. And I wrote an article about it. I write that column.
Yes,
Bring Rhyme and Reason. And I was so incensed to think that something that's good for the public, good for the people, good for anything, is defeated along party lines. Yeah. I think that's terrible.
That's
regardless of who introduces it, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican.
Yes. Well, like you mentioned, you write an article for
Ring, Rhyme, and Reason.
Ring, Rhyme, and Reason, and you just did an article in February edition for, I believe that was Boxing Digest.
I do Boxing Digest also. Yeah. And that particular, I referred to a guy that I have a great admiration for, and he's just won a championship, and that's John Duddy.
Yes, John.
Born in Ireland, a remarkable fighter.
Very nice guy.
And he epitomized the sportsmanship that should exist. And that's why, that takes me to another thing. Yeah. Our organization totally bans the maximum martial arts.
Yes, mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts. Yes. Yeah, that's actually, we were talking about that at another time, that's something that we kind of frown on in the boxing community. Yeah.
Boxing is a severe sport. It has its own violence, so to speak. But I think this is something that's meant to satiate the lust of barbaric people who would watch dog fights or cockfights. And I don't think it could be sanctioned any place as any one sport.
Yes.
You have boxing sanctioned by commissions. What can you sanction here, Nick? What do you
I agree.
Sanction?
When we mention that, it's, my opinion of it, when two combatants get in the ring and they're in incredible shape like these great champions were, and you have to think about rules and regulations, a lot of rules that you have to abide by in combat. It's much more difficult than giving only 2 or 3 rules. You can't eye gouge or bite.
It's absolutely true. It's the fact that these people here are trying to circumvent the truth of the matter by creating an organization that is talking about rules. Yeah. Now, irrespective of what rules they create, the actual contest involves biting, kicking, punching, doing a conglomeration of things that have no specific
guidelines.
Guidelines.
Yeah. I would like to get back to Rocky Marciano for a second.
Yeah.
You also had something come to fruition, which was a stamp for the Rock.
Yes, we did.
And that was great. Can you tell us about how that came about?
I can tell you about that, Nick, and some of the negative part of it, but We tried to get a stamp for Rocky Marciano for a long time.
Well deserved.
He's now deceased 45 years.
Yes.
It's required by the Postmaster General that the person be deceased 20 years.
Yes.
Now, we went to Washington with 15,000 names. At this point in time, I'd like to commend the Order of the Sons of Italy in America. They're the largest Italian-American group. And they worked on getting the petitions. They helped me with it. So I went to Washington with about 20,000 names and presented it to the headquarters of the Sons of Italy and to the Italian-American Foundation. And we had a hearing, and I met the Postmaster General, along with other people. Supreme Court Judge Scalise was in the room, too.
Really?
Yeah, he used to box at college. So the Postmaster General was sort of, I think, rather severe. Mm-hmm. He said, oh, why this great drive to have a stamp for Rocky Marciano? That's where we have a stamp for Jack Dempsey and
good point.
And Joe Louis, and we have a stamp for Roberto Clemente. I said, well, if you don't mind my saying this, I said to him, oh, you have a stamp for Bugs Bunny. Don't you think Rocky Marciano, the only retired and defeated heavyweight champion of all time, deserves as much consideration as a fictitious bug?
Very, very good point.
Was pretty persuasive.
I think that kind of put it over the top. And
his son drew the design for the stamp.
Did he?
And in the year 2000 it was issued.
Excellent. That's really great that I know Rocky, if he was here with us today, he'd be very proud of all the work that you've done.
He would be. He was a remarkable man. He was one of a kind. He was not a pompous person. He'd rather be at home with his family or his great friend Ali Colombo.
Yes.
He was so wonderful, a wonderful son, and from a wonderful, cohesive family. A poor Italian family at the beginning, mm-hmm. but they always had food on the table. They always had this great cohesion. Yeah, there's not many people like The Rock around anymore. No, he's one of a kind. He was a small heavyweight, and the greatness of Rocky was he had to come from behind to win, and I think that classifies a fellow as an extraordinary athlete. Definitely. Coming from behind to win. And he used to train. Nobody trained like he did. Just I hear stories of swimming and running and everything. He was also a good ball player. He had a tryout with the Chicago Cubs, and ironically, that right arm that knocked everybody out couldn't get a ball down to second base. And his mother was totally against it, as all of our parents are, you know. So he yeah, I know that your parents were very against boxing. Totally despised it. They wouldn't sign a contract, though Benny Leonard came to my house, which you've been to, that old house. One of your idols, Benny Leonard. Benny Leonard was one of my teachers, you know. Yes. But getting back to Rocky, his mother found out he was boxing, so she was a dominant Neapolitan woman, you know. Some of the traits rubbed onto Rocky. I think his father was milder. He was a Butzes man. Now, didn't Rocky make a promise to his mother, or didn't his mother say, well, why boxing? And well, he promised her that if they ever lost a fight, he would quit. She was almost hoping he'd lose his first fight. Yeah. But that's why he couldn't afford to lose. But beyond that, his mother said to him one day, Rocky, why don't you be a dancer like Fred Astaire or a singer like Frank Sinatra? He said, Mom, I can't sing and I can't dance. Well, that's why I'm in boxing also, I think, sometimes, because I can't sing and I can't dance. But, yeah, you've just done so much, Stephen. It's great to have you on the show, and I really love everything that you do. And we actually went to West Point together. Yes, for the scrimmage. Yeah, that was we had a great time up there. As a result of my going there, we invited someone from the Herkimer Community College. Yes, tell us about that. They're desirous of having a reciprocal boxing facility up there, training boxers. It's hard to do. Most of the administrators are against boxing in colleges. Mm-hmm. Why, Nick? Because they are afraid that the people whose bad image is going to reflect in the college some way. Yeah. I'm talking about certain elements. I don't want to mention names. Exactly. I think everybody knows them, you know, that have hurt boxing immeasurably. There's pilfered the fighters. Yeah. Even the big ones, like Ali, like Larry Holmes, like so many of them. And that's because we don't have a constituency, we don't have an advocacy to protect the fighter like all other major sports. Yeah, you know, Nick, you've seen some incompetent trainers. Yes, and as a commissioner of the state, I've heard things that were reprehensible from these people. They don't know the game. They know how to talk, how to move in and fight. Move in, move in. they don't know what the basics of the sport, and that would not be tolerated in the dugout of the New York Yankees or anybody of those other sports. But we're the victims. The fighters are the victims.
Yes.
And my bit is always to help the fighters.
Well, I think it's a great thing, and I feel the same way. There's a lot of incompetent trainers out there. There's trainers that throw a towel over their shoulders, and they think they know how to train a guy, and they don't realize what it really takes.
Nick, it's too dangerous a sport to have incompetent people working with fighters.
True, true. And I've been fortunate enough to learn from great trainers like Herschel Jacobs, yourself, Maurice Spizzato, Kid Sharkey, Scoop Galello. These gentlemen, Charlie Caserta, who was...
they were the best.
Yeah, he was one of my coaches, and these gentlemen, you know, all of you have trained world champs, and I don't claim to be a world championship boxer, but I've been fortunate enough to learn how to be a great trainer from what people tell me.
You do very well, Nick, whatever you do, because you're intense.
Thank you.
And again, I reiterate that you're doing a great job at the Westchester Boxing Club, which is on Ferris Avenue.
Yeah.
And where there was once the Cage Teat Center.
Yes, it actually was a...
Charlie Caserta, you mentioned.
Exactly. That's where I met Charlie and Sharkey, and you know, obviously Charlie's no longer with us, and Kenny Mack Sr., who was also one of my trainers.
Yeah.
That's at 220 Ferris Avenue, and it was the Cage Boxing Club. It's a really great feeling to be back in that location.
Well, I think they were conscientious. They had feeling for the fighters, and you have to have a feeling. It's a very tough game.
Yes.
And if you've been in there as I have and other people, you know what it's all about, and you can't discredit the fact that it's a dangerous, very dangerous sport.
Yes.
And the accumulation of punches. I always admonish my students at the college, reduce to an absolute minimum the amount of blows you assimilate in the course of a round, a contest, or a career, because that cumulative number of blows results in injuries, and there's no denying that. Unless
hit and don't get hit.
Crits, you know.
Yeah, Sharkey always says hit and don't get hit.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, definitely having slick defensive, you know, movements definitely helps for the longevity of a career.
Well, Willie Pep said hit and run, hit and run away, and you live to fight another day.
This is true, and Pep was actually one of the only professional boxers to win a round on a scorecard. Is that it?
On all three scorecards, that's all you'll see the punch.
Yes.
He was he was a defensive genius.
Yes.
He could not be hit.
I know Herschel Jacobs was pretty good at defense also.
Herschel was very good. Herschel started with us at the Y. Yeah. And then Sharkey took over the management of Herschel.
And Herschel Jacobs was a light heavyweight contender.
Yes.
And he fought, he actually...
Harold Johnson in Rome.
He fought Harold Johnson. He also defeated Reuben Hurricane Carter, and they never mentioned that in the movie, which I was very upset about, that they didn't give Jake that credit.
Herschel was a good boxer, took a good punch, and had an effective jab, very effective jab.
And he's also a very accomplished boxing trainer. I know he's worked with a lot of people at the Yonkers PAL with Sal Corrente.
He's a likable guy, and having been in there himself, he knows how a fighter would feel.
Yes.
You know, I heard a second the other night, and we nearly our commissioner nearly called him in. He said to the fighter, "If you don't do better in this next round, I won't be here when you come back."
That's terrible.
Well, maybe you don't need him there in the first place, you know, because the fighter was in a fight that he couldn't win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're very experienced as far as making sure that your boxers do not get overmatched. What I mean by that is the experience.
It's almost a fixation. You know?
Yeah, well, tell us about that. I know that you used to go down with Sharkey down to the city.
Well, I'll tell you one little story which substantiates what you said. And that is that the first boxing ever held on television, shown on television, was at Grand Central Station, the 5th floor, and they had 5 amateur bouts. The trainer, the clerk of the AAU, seemed to favor those New York clubs, because the volume of boxers they used came from those clubs. And we were down from Westchester unattached. So he presented. He said, "This is the fellow." I had a guy named Irish Bill Mulvey, was undefeated, nice kid, became a sergeant in Suffolk County Police Department later on. But he showed me the card, and the boy was 17. He had a skein of wins. He had 13 wins, and they said, "Well, this is his opponent." Well, I looked at the card. The fellow was 22. Physical maturity was greater.
Yes.
He had a lot of fights. And speaking to friends of mine, I found out bootleg fights, they call them, where he's paid to box in other states. So, as was the custom, if you didn't fight, you got dressed, they paid the car fare to go down from New York, Westchester. So I said, Bill, get dressed. He said, okay, coach. And the fellow with his shaking hand said, you're ruining my show. He's a white kid, I want to put him on. I didn't see white or black.
Yeah, exactly.
My father taught me to judge everybody by the way.
So you were trying to basically...
So black or white had nothing to do.
Trying to protect your fighter and make sure
exactly
he doesn't
right.
get overmatched.
So he said, you're going to ruin my show. I said, I don't really care about your show. You're not going to ruin my boxing.
Exactly.
Well, trained too hard and too long.
I'm glad to have you on the show today, Steve, and I just, time is winding down. We have to wrap up a little bit. I'd like to mention, I'd like to thank Steve Acunto for being on the show today, and thank you for tuning in to In the Ring. I'm your host, Nicky Knuckles Delory, and I'd like to mention a charity event that we're doing. It's called a Cancer Relay. It's going to be at the White Plains High School June 2nd. It's from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's an all-night event, and we'd like to have your participation, the public. If you want to be involved in the program, you're more than welcome to give a call at the gym at 914-328-1773. If you'd like to come down, it's going to be a great event and something that I think anybody that has somebody in their family that may have had cancer or friends or family members. So we'd just like to close off by saying thanks. Steve, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And it's really a wonderful thing what you've done with these great world champs. And we're going to have a great time at this boxing clinic that we're doing. So
I look forward to it.
Yeah, and I look forward to having you come back on the show. And we'd like to thank guys like Kid Sharkey and everybody else that's made everything possible in the AAIB. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, Steve. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much.